Sometimes I think I might be paralyzed, stuck inside a limbo state of mind. Are we the catalyst for change, or will there be more of the same with time? More of the same with time. Just when there's no more breath of air, the light shines through the cracks in the shell. It turns out that this isn't hell, it's just the shell of our chrysalis. The shell of our chrysalis. Sitting alone in the dark, with nowhere to go, it feels so hopeless. But we're not doomed to fail. This is just our metamorphosis. Our metamorphosis. Dark becomes light from the day. Light, night. Become the change, kindle the fire from inside. Dark becomes light from the day. Night, become the change, kindle the fire from inside. Dark becomes light from the day into night. Become the change, kindle the fire from inside. Dark becomes light from the day into night. Become the change, kindle the fire from inside.
And good evening, everyone. It's good to be back, and hope you're having a wonderful evening. I am Lynx. I'm from Norway. I'm sure most people know me by now. And of course, I have my co-hostess with me.
Yes. We have frogs tonight.
We
Very good
do.
to be back. We've been away on a little break.
Yeah, and also now you're from the UK and not from outer space in the tin can.
Oh,
So,
true. Yes,
yeah, give a huge
that was
applause for the new microphone.
new mic. Am I sounding better, chat? Do things sound better? I'm still getting used to what distance I have to be or whatever. From the mic.
Yeah,
Oh,
well, so do
hey, you got
I
a mate in the
actually.
chat.
Yeah.
I see 3.
Uh, I have to
Yeah.
get used to it as well because I've got an audio interface now, so I'm not quite used to it
Mm,
yet.
yeah. No, the audio equipment is weird. It's temperamental,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, and I agree. Is very happy with the new microphone, so that's great.
Nice. Recorded this week's stories with it, so I think Fornull will be happy as well
Yeah,
because he was like, the noise in the background of your recordings. I keep trying to do something about it. But you used a
yeah.
lot of noise reduction on this one. Yes. I don't have to use any noise reduction with this microphone,
Neither do I
actually.
with my audio interface. It's completely quiet. It's fantastic.
That is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, condenser microphone. Convenient invention. It only picks up noise coming at it from a certain angle.
Yeah, and as long as there's not that much noise through the cord and everything, then it's really really good. So yeah, we're improving.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Doing the things with the proper audio equipment. It's got a pop filter and everything.
yeah.
I'm doing I'm being all professional and stuff here.
Congratulations.
Oh, try being a bit closer. I cut out sometimes. Okay, I will make sure my face is like right next to this mic, and I will fiddle around with where it's at distance wise from me. During maybe the first story and stuff. So I'll remember to be close to the mic.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, frogs.
I'm sorry. I agree,
That was not a
says.
segue.
Always wondered what Katrina would sound like with some actual bass in her voice.
Bass.
Ah,
Is it sounding significantly different? Do I have bass in my voice now? I guess I do.
is she still mad for us? That's the question.
That's the question.
Yeah.
That is the question. Do I still sound like Mike Madfires with a better microphone?
I'm
Uh,
sure the chat will let us know.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But yeah, got the Pepes. Telling stories about the Pepes today.
Yeah. Another proper spring theme.
Yes, definitely. But, considering what a mascot they've become, it seems like an appropriate theme to return with, definitely.
Yeah. We
I found
were
a lot out about them actually.
they are quite interesting. I'm
Hmm.
still very fascinated with the midwife frogs.
Oh,
I still
I
can't
don't
get
really
over
know
that.
about those actually.
I only know what I read on Wikipedia. And they are called
Okay,
midwife
more than me.
frogs because the males actually tend to the eggs before they hatch. And they carry them
Oh,
on their hind legs and elevate them according to how much
uh-huh.
moisture there is in the air. And when it's time for the eggs to hatch, then they go to some water source and lay the eggs in the water.
So what? They're just lying on their back with raising their legs up and down
Yeah.
for an entire how long it takes the eggs to gestate. That's got to be worse than being pregnant.
Yeah.
At least that doesn't require a lot of thigh strength. At least for
Yeah.
not that long of a time.
No.
You do got to raise your legs at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There
Okay.
there are actually quite a few interesting species and very
Hmm.
interesting names.
Oh. Well, we can hear more about those. I am deemed no longer Mad Fires, but not quite Barry White. I mean, fine by me.
Yeah.
I don't think I was aiming to Barry White.
Well, that's good to know. So,
Like a dude anymore.
yeah. That is good.
Largely a sort of pregnancy. Like a lot of the symbology around them is about coming into being and fecundity and germination and evolution. And I think they were very representative of like a primordial state of matter in many cases. And phases and well, as per the opening song, metamorphosis, resurrection even, just because of the weird way in which they do change from frogs to tadpoles, or I suppose everything develops that way. But frogs are one of the animals where people could see it.
Yeah, to a frog, not the other way around. But one reason
yeah,
for is a mistake to do.
Done.
One reason why they have that image is because the development from tadpole to frog usually takes 24 hours. So from one day to the next, suddenly there are frogs everywhere. And I live in a place where there's a lot of small lakes, and we have a lot of frogs. So walking on the sidewalks until after midsummer, actually, there are tons of tiny, tiny frogs. And it's really hard not to genocide them by accident. So,
Oh
because,
no.
yeah, it's really sad. But,
Oh no. That is sad.
yeah, they migrate from different ponds and
Try
stuff.
not to
So,
squish the pepes.
yeah, I do my best. So, and suddenly they're just there. It's quite perplexing. And I didn't actually know it took only 24 hours. That was quite a revelation.
Yeah, that's one day no frogs, suddenly frogs. That must be quite biblical seeming.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an explanation for certain events. Gotta be pretty weird to suddenly have like a plague of frogs around.
Yeah.
But yeah.
At least they're not falling from the sky. So I'm quite happy
At
with
least
that.
they're not.
Yeah. I think the theory around that is that they get sucked up into the atmosphere by some storm and then get deposited somewhere else.
Yeah, could have happened. Could have happened.
Yeah.
Or maybe gods get angry and decide to throw frogs.
Yeah. Well, apparently it's happened to fish as well. Suddenly there just falls tons of fish down from the sky out of nowhere. So weird stuff happens.
Oh dear. Well, at least you get some free fish out of that.
Yeah. Hopefully they're not too squished by the impact. but
Hopefully not.
hopefully not.
But yeah.
And
I don't know, frogs.
yeah,
Sorry. Frogs, they also seemed to generally as well represent uncleanliness and fall of the spirit, and they were seen to represent sort of foolish aspirations as well. Sometime. I'm not sure why they would represent that, but I guess. No, I'm not sure why people would associate frogs with that. There wasn't much explanation I could find for that one.
no, it actually seems to be quite specifically European to view frogs and toads in a more negative light. They're also associated with, witches and poison and stuff like that. And
Yes.
I do wonder if that was the work of the church. And for any Christians
might have
listening,
been.
just to make it clear, I separate Christians from the church. I view the church more as a power center, someone that wants power. So if I speak negatively about something the church have done or might have done or something, it's not not necessarily bad speaking against Christians per se, just to make that clear.
No, certainly you meet a lot of Christians on the right who do not really go with what the church say and would have their own disagreements with it.
Yeah,
So certainly can't generalize the Christians
no.
with the institution of the church and what the church did
Yeah, well, definitely.
hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, and we also see that now with the woke church and everything. I see so many Christians say that that isn't Christianity, and similar stuff has happened in the past. So, it's in many ways the same mechanism as that, and it doesn't necessarily represent the religion. People want power, including priests and
Indeed.
popes and everything. So,
We've just had a diamond actually saying, "Praise Kek, the god of all frog kind." Which actually I did come across stuff about Kek. Kek is an established frog god, actually. But you might want to be careful with praising him because he is a deification of the concept of primordial darkness, apparently. In the ancient Egyptian cosmology.
a chaos.
There were 4 pairs of.
He's a chaos god, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's basically a chaos god.
Mm-hmm.
So, unless you feel like your life needs more chaos, maybe be careful with praising Keg. His female counterpart was actually called Coquette. They represent night and day, and were called Raiser Up of the Light and Raiser Up of the Night, respectively. It's true, actually, I agree. Like Loki or something, or in the Norse pantheon. But you don't worship chaos. Or at least in the Odinist faith, you don't worship chaos because it's not really something you want to invite into your life. Hence why most of us don't worship Loki. But that's a view that we have. It's a little bit too much playing with fire for us, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a force for change and making stuff happen. stability can be too rigid, frigid, and all of that. So in order for anything to happen, you need a certain amount of chaos. But, the
Yeah.
aim should be
Yeah.
to have a fair balance of it. And there's a natural ebb and flow between things getting a bit stale and everything, and then there's chaos, and then it stabilizes and stuff like that. So, it goes back and forth. It's part of our duality. So,
Definitely. And frogs seem like very dual as well. Like they were also identified with another Egyptian deity called Heket. Um, and she's represented by a frog, and she is a birth goddess. She's a goddess of fertility and life, and many of her followers were midwives because that's what they believed that she wanted them to do, bring new life into the world. And I believe that these ancient Egyptian gods, they're not quite Indo-European gods, but I think they were definitely influenced by that. And the Greeks had a lot of dialogue with them about it. So it's still interesting to look at them, I think.
yeah, when it comes to frogs and Egypt, it's very much tied to the overflow of the Nile. And that again is connected to harvest, you know. And mine just stopped.
No, I get that. I
Yeah.
get that.
I
Like-
am on day 18 straight of yoga, and my body is definitely starting to protest quite a bit, including my brain. So,
Oh dear.
but I will persevere. I will get through this. I will continue and get nice and limber. But the flooding of the Nile is essential for them being able to grow food. And with the moisture comes the frogs. So, of course, they would associate frogs and their singing with fertility and harvest and all of that. So, thank you, Nulles, for the ice cream. That is very good of you.
Yay,
So,
ice cream.
yeah.
Thank you.
It's soon time for ice cream again. It's getting warmer
Yay.
and lighter.
I think that's certainly why the ancient Egyptians have sort of gotten a focus, a bit more of a focus on the frog. I mean, in other places, you see the sort of same narrative about frogs with the fertility as well, like in Mesopotamia. You have the Sumerian poem of Inanna and Enki. So this goddess tricks the goddess Inanna, tricked Enki, the god of water, into giving her all the sacred mess, the decrees of the gods, and that provoked Enki to send watery creatures to retrieve the decrees of the gods in this poem. And the first of those was actually a frog, apparently. So the frog was the first creature to try and retrieve the decrees of the gods in that sort of ancient Mesopotamian culture, which is also an Indo-European one.
And in a very dry climate, I think. I think it
Yeah.
was very dry in those days as well. So,
I think it was like Egypt. There were like parts of it which were rivers, and the civilization would be mostly based around any place where you could find water.
mhm.
That's how it tends to work.
Yeah, it is. Maybe not in Finland, I don't know. I think that's the country with the most lakes in the world.
Oh hey, we got like a Medes in the YouTube chat. he can only hear you in one ear, Lynx. But I like Lycomedes anyway. Um, and people check out Lycomedes. Lycomedes does. But yeah,
That is probably due to my audio interface. I will mute myself and see if I can get my audio in from another direction. That should be in stereo.
Mm.
So, um,
yes.
should we have a story in the meantime? Or do you want
Yeah,
to
sure.
have
Let's
a
have a
monologue?
story.
Okay, which one?
Um, we could start with uh the Well of the World's End.
Okay,
I reckon that's a good one.
yeah, it is.
Nice. And I believe that was the one from Scotland.
Yeah, I think
So
it was.
enjoy, my Scottish peeps.
Okay, well, the Well of the World's End coming up.
Once upon a time, and a very good time it was, though it wasn't in my time, nor in your time, nor anyone else's time, there was a girl whose mother had died, and her father had married again, and her stepmother hated her because she was more beautiful than herself, and she was very cruel to her. She used to make her do all the servants' work, and never let her have any peace. At last, one day, the stepmother thought to get rid of her altogether. So she handed a sieve to her and said, "Go fill it at the Well of the World's End, and bring it home to me, full, or woe betide you." For she thought that she would never be able to find the Well of the World's End, and if she did, how could she bring home a sieve full of water? Well, the girl started off, and asked everyone she met to tell her where the Well of the World's End was. But nobody knew, and she didn't know what to do, when a queer little old woman, all bent double, told her where it was, and how she could get to it. So she did what the old woman told her, and at last arrived at the Well of the World's End. But when she dipped the sieve in the cold, cold water, it all ran out again. She tried, and she tried again, but every time it was the same, and at last she sat down and cried as if her heart would break. Suddenly she heard a croaking voice, and she looked up and saw a great frog with googly eyes looking at her and speaking to her. "What's the matter, dearie?" it said. Oh dear," she said. "My stepmother has sent me all this long way to fill this sieve with water from the well at the World's End, and I can't fill it, nohow at all." "Well," said the frog, "if you promise me to do whatever I bid you for a whole night long, I'll tell you how to fill it." So the girl agreed, and then the frog said, "Stop it with moss and daub it with clay, and then you will carry the water away." And then it gave a hop, skip, and jump, and went flop into the Well of the World's End. So the girl looked about for some moss, and lined the bottom of the sieve with it. Over that she put some clay, and then she dipped it once again into the Well of the World's End, and this time the water didn't run out. She turned to go away. Just then the frog popped up its head out of the Well of the World's End, and said, "Remember your promise." All right, said the girl. For, thought she, what harm can a frog do me? So she went back to her stepmother and brought the sieve full of water from the well of the world's end. The stepmother was fine and angry, but she said nothing at all. That very evening they heard something tapping at the door, low down, and a voice cried out, "Open the door, my honey, my heart. Open the door, my own darling. Mind the words that you and I spoke, down in the meadow, at the world's end well." "Whatever can that be?" cried out the stepmother. And the girl had to tell her all about it, and what she had promised the frog. "Girls must keep their promises," said the stepmother. "Go and open the door, this instant." For she was glad the girl would have to obey a nasty frog. So the girl went and opened the door, and there was the frog from the well of the world's end, and it hopped and skipped and jumped till it reached the girl, and then it said, "Lift me to your knee, my honey, my heart. Lift me to your knee, my own darling. Remember the words that you and I spoke, down in the meadow by the world's end well." But the girl didn't like to, till her stepmother said, "Lift it up this instant, you hussy. Girls must keep their promises." So at last she lifted the frog up onto her lap, and it lay there for a time, till at last it said, "Give me some supper, my hinny, my heart. Give me some supper, my darling. Remember the words that you and I spake, in the meadow, by the well of the world's end." Well, she didn't mind doing that. So she got it a bowl of milk and bread, and fed it well. And when the frog had finished, it said, "Go to bed with me, my hinny, my heart. Go to bed with me, my own darling. Mind you the words you spake to me, down by the cold well, so weary." But the girl wouldn't do, till her stepmother said, "Do what you promised, girl. Girls must keep their promises. Do what you're bid, or out you go, you and your froggy." So the girl took the frog with her to bed, and kept it as far away as she could. Well, just as the day was beginning to break, what should the frog say but, "Chop off my head, my hinny, my heart. Chop off my head, my own darling. Remember the promise you made to me, down by the cold well, so weary." At first the girl wouldn't, for she thought of what the frog had done for her at the well of the world's end. But when the frog said the words over again, she went and took an axe and chopped off its head. And lo, and behold, there stood before her a handsome young prince, who told her that he had been enchanted by a wicked magician, and he could never be unspelled till some girl would do his bidding for the whole night, and chop his head off at the end of it. The stepmother was that surprised when she found the young prince instead of the nasty frog. And she wasn't best pleased, you may be sure, when the prince told her that he was going to marry her stepdaughter, because she had unspelled him. So they were married, and went away to live in the castle of the king, and all the stepmother had to console her was, that it was all through her, that her stepdaughter was married to a prince.
Okay. Still, let's see, I only have one bar. Sorry about that. But our first story for tonight is finished.
Hi, Lynx. Yeah, I'm hearing you a lot better personally. I think I can hear you much louder than before, and I can hear you in both ears myself.
Ah,
I don't
that
I
is.
don't know if that's translating to OBS though.
Yeah, that's because you're hearing me through StreamYard. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm currently not routing my own audio through StreamYard. I think I might have to
Okay.
reinstall my voice meter. That was the issue we had. So
The audio.
yeah, bloody audio. I'm
Well, if they can only hear you in one ear, at least they can hear you. I mean,
yeah,
we've had worse issues with the audio before.
definitely. So sorry,
Oh
there's
dear.
nothing I can do right now, but I will have it fixed until next Sunday. So you just
Mm-hmm.
have to bear having me in one ear. I'm sorry.
Yes, just make sure you have one bad ear, whatever whatever headphone ear you can hear links out of, make sure it's on the good ear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the Well of the World's End. Uh, and indeed, talking of monologuing, yes, I might have to monologue a bit now. I do try
Okay.
to I try and avoid it, but I have the tendency. I actually really like the way this story begins. Once upon a time it was that wasn't in my time, nor in your time, nor in anybody else's time. And that's an intriguing beginning, actually, because the beginning a story like that, it seems to make reference to me to the fact that myth and fable sort of exist out with time and in every time at once. And I think there's a reason why we do begin stories with once upon a time. And that might seem like a vague way of avoiding a date, but to me that really seems to indicate an eternal, renewing, sort of mythological time. As in, it doesn't matter what time this happens, this is an eternal archetype, and you're relearning a lesson every time, or you're reiterating or reenacting an event in a golden age every time that you do it. And again, I'm going to mention him. I recommend everybody reads. I don't know if that was just the modern styling of the writer, but I liked it. Yeah. Coming into the themes like the well, again, I'm immediately reminded of Mimi as well. Wells always do remind me of that. And they're symbols of sort of salvation and life and knowledge and truth and sources of life. And interestingly enough, water rising from the earth has often symbolized feminine bounty. So it seems quite fitting that a young woman is seeking this well, but also, the depths of the unconscious and memory. For because we did that story with the three heads in the well, the three magical heads coming out of the well. But I found it interesting that the girl had a stepmother and she's been sent to take water from this feminine bounty of the well, but all she has is a sieve. And I kind of feel like that can represent the girl maybe not having the knowledge of her mother and the matrilineal line to draw on, so she's not quite completing these feminine rites of passage and the way in which having a woman who isn't her family competing for her father's attention is like holding her back, maybe. That's getting quite psychological about it. But she sort of has. Oh, as well, she seems to have a destiny because she's receiving what's quite clearly intervention from some sort of goddess crone figure or seeress type figure who's bent double. But yeah, I don't know if you had any sort of thoughts on that interpretation, Links. I mean, I have a little bit more to say about it, but I don't know what you think of that one.
Well, okay, my audio. um, Women going and seeking out a water source. I connect water with emotion and the realm of feeling. So it's getting in touch with that and drawing water from an under subterranean, source that how to put it? It takes my mind to drawing knowledge and sustenance from the earth, and that is a very female thing.
Yeah, true.
And with the well, you have to dig down and support the sides while you dig so it doesn't collapse. So it's you're seeking it, and you have to work for it. So I did read a thread about wells a few years ago that was very interesting, and of course I can't remember it right now.
It's always the way.
Yeah.
This one article that I read once that I got to keep track of and can't exactly link right now, but it was really good. Yeah, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. There is definitely, the image of the Well of Mimir. At least when you have a focus on the Norse tradition. I can't exactly remember any specific myths or figures that is that well connected with wells in particular from the more southern regions, but that might just be me, and I will learn. But when you live in a warmer and drier climate, then a well is definitely more important. Um,
Definitely, yeah. So that they're of kind of vital importance in the hotter countries, definitely. This story is from Germany, but still, you're well source of clean water because even where you have I I I found just to sort of move on in the plot a bit, I found the solution to this quite simple. Like, just yeah, just cover the holes, cover them with clay and moss, and then you can put water in the sizz. And she sort of needed an input to come to that solution from the frog. Rational or masculine into sort of influence. Or is it that certain truths, while they may be evident when you come to see them, take contact with sort of supernatural forces and adverse experiences to sort of get in touch with. And she has to make a promise in exchange for knowledge as well, which I do find interesting.
Yeah.
And it sort of reminds sorry.
You seem to go silent at times. Your audio goes in and out, and I can pick you up fine. So it might be that my internet is under a bit of stress right now, so that the signal isn't that strong.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like right close to my mic right now. I'm really trying to keep my mouth like close to it.
I can hear you fine. You don't go
Mhm.
in and out for me. You robot a
Okay.
couple of times, but so that's your internet.
Let-
But it might be from my OBS out to the stream.
Yeah,
But it's odd if
I'm just
I'm not doing
closing some
it.
tabs.
If it's only Katrina, not me, that would be odd if that was the case. Oh, audio.
That is weird.
Yeah.
Everybody hearing me okay now? I'll just keep talking. Do let me know if anything is up. But yeah, I mean, it was reminding me sort of the way that oracles in Greece were women and would have access to this vast pool of knowledge. Like, you know, they would get visions and stuff, but they needed rational interpreters there to make sense of their premonitions. Like a lot of the time. Because you may be in front of knowledge of a certain sort, but you may need help in order to access it, especially in the heat of a moment. That's sort of what it reminded me of. Oh, good, everyone's hearing me now. It's better. Ooh, psychedelic squirrel. That's a freaking good username, actually.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it's definitely a point about getting the helpers to access what you're trying to achieve, or I think
Or yeah, that
this is just a really done a number on my brain right now. I think I might need a brain transplant or something.
I don't think those exist. Like,
uh,
I think that's called body snatching.
yeah. Maybe I can ask for an external one that I can plug in or something. But you know, that's a bit too yeah,
Rechargeable brain.
extra storage.
It's humanist.
That's transhumanist, definitely. So I think I will stick with my own. Um, um, but it's quite rare that anyone can go through the transformation and growth that they go through in a story all by themselves. They usually get some helpers of one kind or another on that way.
Yeah, definitely. We don't see growth independently in fairy tales. There is usually a person who comes along and is a catalyst to give advice or to incite an incident.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's sort of following quite a typical feminine heroine path here. I mean, she certainly has to give, she has to provide, like most feminine heroes do. Now, what I find curious really is this urging from the stepmother, because usually the stepmother in the story really does anything but help. But I kind of think it's a reflection of how even the circumstances that really seem bad or the people that are bad might be unwittingly sort of pushing us towards what we need to do in long run. Like it certainly seems like this girl in particular, this is her like fate or weird and you know aspects which are superficially bad in her life have been leading her to this as well.
Yeah, from the page you sent with that story, there was another well story. Um, and in this case, it was a queen who had 3 daughters, and the queen was dying. And in a last attempt to save her life, she sends her daughter one after another to get the water from this well because that can cure all illnesses. And the 2 eldest daughters, they said that it was impossible to get, so they got some fake well water from a river just outside the castle.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yep.
and the youngest daughter went, and it turns out that the condition to get the water was to marry a frog, and the 2 eldest didn't want to do it. But the youngest daughter did, and after a bit of drama at the end, the water is spilled out, so she has to cut off the frog's head in order to save her mother. And by doing that, she also breaks the spell on the young man who was the frog. And in that story, he had to sacrifice his life in order to be freed. Um, but on the part of the girl, it's, the sacrifice for someone you love. And it's a sacrifice in the domestic area. So that is definitely a female stereotypical act to do. So it was definitely an interesting story.
Story there being very similar to this one as well. I actually there's the next one that I have as well has 3 daughters as well, and I have a little bit of a theory as to why it might always it's always the youngest daughter. Certainly, I think it has to do with triumvirate goddesses, perhaps. But yeah, the chopping off of the head. I don't know. Like for some reason, it took my mind to Lord of the Rings. Particularly Eowyn slaying the Nazgul and the sort of the the badness or evil or uncleanness that only the feminine life-giving force can cleanse. Like because it's not usually a very feminine act to chop off something's head. So when a story places a woman in that position, I tend to assume it's because the thing has to do specifically with the nature of femininity.
Well, the topic of beheading in stories like that is usually tied with resurrection. There are plenty of enchanted people who have been turned into animals, and the only way to set them free is to chop off their heads. And as such, they start a new life. So again, we then see, at least when it's women doing it, it's definitely feminine. But I'm not sure that's always the case. But it's closely tied to resurrection as well. But I do make a good point with being a cleansing act.
Yeah, because I know for a lot of places the frog is maybe not so unclean. I mean, I know for China and Japan, it's lucky or it's good luck. But in the European symbology, it would be. I read it in this story as uncleanliness, and I read it as a in both stories really symbolic of like a fall in the prince's
Yeah.
nature. I think my second story even has an explanation for why the prince is a frog. That seemed very
Yeah.
symbolic of like a
Thank you to
fall in
Moshe
his nature.
Finkelstein for the 5 lemons. That is much appreciated. Um, mhm.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we've had a few diamonds as well from Aya Green, Nullis
Yeah,
Krampus, and
thank you.
1690 Sparky. So thank you very much. Always
Definitely.
appreciated. Yeah. But yeah, it's like wait, I was not talking into my mic then. But yeah, I sort of like how the stepmother at the end still uses her for street cred and tries to take credit for her wedding. That's very like real life. It really shows an understanding of these sort of people who don't do anything except hinder you and put you down, and but they still want to act like they helped you get where you are when you get where you're going, even if they only did so like indirectly and with no intention of doing so. I feel like fairy tales understand narcissists quite well
Yeah.
a lot of the time.
No, when there are some people who want to take credit for everything, no matter what. So it's definitely
Yeah.
something to do with control issues, I would say.
Yeah, or they poo-pooed an idea of yours, like not being willing to admit that they were wrong or something. Yeah, we've all
Yeah,
kind of met those people, I think. And relatable to us when they turn up in
yeah.
fairy
Well,
tales.
that's the that's the thing
I
with
think we all
stories
experience.
like that. Many of the characters are so relatable because we've usually met someone in our life that reminds us of a particular character. So it brings it
It's
brings it
true.
into
What's
real
chat
life.
say? Yeah, it definitely does. And that's why these stories can help us work out real life things as well, and the lessons that you learn in them. Lord of the Rings is peak Kino, and not enough. Is it? I don't know enough about films to
That is
describe what
cinema.
Kino is. Yeah, I know it's cinema in German, but what does it mean when English people say
That I don't know, but
Kino?
it's kino in Norwegian as well. So,
That's what I don't know. Understand.
uh, but it was definitely peak cinema,
Hmm.
just to simplify it. Um,
brilliant
Yeah,
films.
I
I love Lord of the
watched
Rings.
them a couple of weeks ago or something. So I've also listened to the audiobooks quite a few times since Christmas. So I'm a bit on the Lord of the Ring binge right now.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, Ozzy just uses it to describe anything he likes.
Ah,
So that's how Ozzy means it. Cool.
that is
Cleared
good to
up.
know. I will make a note of it behind my
Nice.
ear.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that one was interesting, and of course it's from Scotland. So I gotta include some
Yeah.
stuff for my Scottish peeps.
Oh, yeah.
Always cool. I found one in Scots. I want to get like a Scottish person to read the one in Scots
I won't
because
even try.
I cannot. Nope. You could probably read it on the page, but yeah,
No.
neither of us would be particularly good at reading it
Do you
out.
think you need some practice with that?
Oh dear.
And I have enough with getting my story reading and my English together. So I will keep to that for the time being.
Kino means very good,
Ah,
according to Citra in the YouTube chat. Cool.
yeah.
That is cleared up then.
Okay. I was just about to ask
Shall we
that.
have another story?
Should we take the long one or the short one?
Let's take the long one so we
Okay.
got time to fit it in properly.
This time we will encounter a female frog, actually. So that was I came across that story. It's a Polish story, and that got me really thinking about the theme of frogs. So that is the tadpole of this show, you could say, where it all began. So yeah, let's listen to the Frog Princess.
Indeed.
The Frog Princess. There once was a king who was very old, but he had 3 grown-up sons. So he called them to him and said, "My dear sons, I am very old, and the cares of government press heavily upon me. I must therefore give them over to one of you. But, as there is the law among us that no unmarried prince may be king, I wish you all to get married, and whoever chooses the best wife shall be my successor." So they determined each to go a different way and settled it thus. They went to the top of a very high tower, and each one at a given signal shot an arrow in a different direction to the others. Wherever their arrows fell, they were to go in search of their future wives. The eldest princess' arrow fell on a palace in the city, where lived a senator who had a beautiful daughter, so we went there and married her. The second princess' arrow struck upon a country house, where a very pretty young lady, the daughter of a rich gentleman, was sitting. So we went there and proposed to her, and they were married. But the youngest princess' arrow shot through a green wood and fell into a lake. He saw his arrow floating among the reeds, and a frog sitting thereon, looking fixedly at him. But the marshy ground was so unsafe that he could not venture upon it, so he sat down in despair. "What is the matter, prince?" asked the frog. "What is the matter? Why, I cannot reach that arrow on which you are sitting." "Take me for your wife, and I will give it to you." "But how can you be my wife, little frog?" "That is just what has got to be. You know that you shot your arrow from the tower, thinking that where it fell you would find a loving wife, so you will have her in me." "You are very wise, I see, little frog. But tell me, how can I marry you, or introduce you to my father, and what will the world say?" "Take me home with you, and let nobody see me. Tell them that you have married an Eastern lady who must not be seen by any man except her husband, nor even by another woman." The prince considered a little. The arrow had now floated to the margin of the lake. He took the arrow from the little frog, put her in his pocket, carried her home, and then went to bed, sighing very deeply. Next morning the king was told that all his sons had got married, so he called them all together and said, "Well, children, are you all pleased with your wives?" "Very pleased indeed, father and king." "Well, we shall see who has chosen best. Let each of my daughters-in-law weave me a carpet by tomorrow, and the one whose carpet is the most beautiful shall be queen." The elder princes hastened at once to the ladies, but the youngest, when he reached home, was in despair. "What is the matter, prince?" asked the frog. "What is the matter? My father has ordered that each of his daughters-in-law shall weave him a carpet, and the one whose carpet proves the most beautiful shall be first in rank. My brother's wives are most likely working at the looms already. But you, little frog, although you can give back an arrow and talk like a human being, will not be able to weave a carpet as far as I can see." "Don't be afraid," she said. "Go to sleep, and before you wake the carpet shall be ready." He lay down and went to sleep, but the little frog stood on her hind legs in the window and sang, "Ye breezes that blow, ye winds that sigh, come hither on airy wing, and all of you stray to my dwelling high, and various treasures bring. 2 fleeces I crave of the finest wool, and the loveliest flowers a basketful. From the depths of the ocean bring sands of gold, and pearl drops of lustre manifold, that so I may fashion a carpet bright, adorned with flowers and gems of light, and weave it in one short day and night, when my true love's hands must the treasure hold." There was a gentle murmur of the breeze, and from the sunbeams descended 7 lovely maidens, who floated into the rooms, carrying baskets of various colored wools, pearls, and flowers. They curtsied deeply to the little frog, and in a few minutes they wove a wonderfully beautiful carpet. Then they curtsied again and flew away. Meanwhile, the wives of the other princes brought the most beautifully colored wools and the best designs they could find, and worked hard at their looms all the next day. Then all the princes came before the king and spread out their carpets before him. The king looked at the first and the second, but when he came to the third, he exclaimed, "That's the carpet for me. I give the first place to my youngest son's wife. But there must be another trial yet." And he ordered that each of his daughters-in-law should make a cake next day, and the husband of the one whose cake proved best should be his successor. The youngest prince came back to his frog wife, who looked very thoughtful and sighed deeply. "What is the matter, prince?" she asked. "My father demands another proof of skill, and I am not so sure we shall succeed as well as before, for how can you bake a cake?" "Do not be afraid," she said. "Lie down and go to sleep, and when you wake you will be in a happier frame of mind." The prince went to sleep, and the frog sprang up to the window and sang, "Ye breezes that blow, ye winds that sigh, come hither on airy wing, and all of you stray to my dwelling high, these various gifts to bring. From the sunbeams bright bring me heat and light, and soft water distill from the pure flowing rill, and the flowers of the field the sweet odors they yield. From the wheat field obtain 5 full measures of grain, that so I may bake in the night time a cake for my true love's sake." The winds began to rise, and the 7 beautiful maidens floated down into the room, carrying baskets with flour, water, sweetmeats, and all sorts of dainties. They curtsied to the little frog and got the cake ready in a few minutes, curtsied again and flew away. The next day the 3 princes brought their cakes to the king. They were all very good, but when he tasted the one made by his youngest son's wife, he exclaimed, "That is the cake for me, light, floury, white, and delicious. I see, my son, you have made the best choice, but we must wait a little longer." The 2 elder sons went away much depressed, but the youngest greatly elated. When he reached home, he took up his little frog, stroked and kissed her, and said, "Tell me, my love, how it was that you, being only a little frog, could weave such a beautiful carpet or make such a delicious cake." "Because, my prince, I am not what I seem. I am a princess, and my mother is the renowned Queen of Light and a great enchantress. But she has many enemies, who, as they could not injure her, were always seeking to destroy me. To conceal me from them, she was obliged to turn me into a frog, and for 7 years I have been forced to stay in the marsh where you found me. But under this frog skin I am really more beautiful than you can imagine. Yet until my mother has conquered all her enemies, I must wear this disguise. After that takes place, you shall see me as I really am." While they were talking, 2 courtiers entered, with the king's orders to the young prince to come to a banquet at the king's palace and to bring his wife with him, as his brothers were doing with theirs. He knew not what to do, but the little frog said, "Do not be afraid, my prince. Go to your father alone, and when he asks for me, it will begin to rain. You must then say that your wife will follow you, but she is now bathing in Maydew. When it lightens, say that I am dressing, and when it thunders, that I am coming." The prince, trusting to her word, set out for the palace, and the frog jumped up to the window and, standing on her hind legs, began to sing, "Ye breezes that blow, ye winds that sigh, come hither on airy wing, and all of you stray to my dwelling high. These several gifts to bring, my beauty of yore, and my bright youth once more, all my dresses so fair, and my jewels so rare, and let me delight my dear love by the sight." Then the 7 beautiful damsels, who were the handmaidens of the princess when she lived with her mother, floated on the sunbeams into the room. They curtsied, walked 3 times around her, and pronounced some magical words. Then the frog skin fell off her, and she stood among them, a miracle of beauty and the lovely princess she was. Meanwhile, the prince, her husband, had arrived at the royal banquet hall, which was already full of guests. The old king welcomed him warmly and asked, "Where is your wife, my son?" Then a light rain began to fall, and the prince said, "She will not be long. She is now bathing herself in Maydew." Then came a flash of lightning, which illuminated all the palace, and he said, "She is now adorning herself." But when it thundered, he ran to the door, exclaiming, "Here she is!" And the lovely princess came in, seeming to bring the sunshine with her. They all stood amazed at her beauty. The king could not contain his delight, and she seemed to him all the more beautiful because he thought her the very image of his long-deceased queen. The prince himself was no less astonished and overjoyed to find such loveliness in her, whom he had only as yet seen in the shape of a little frog. "Tell me, my son," said the king, "why did you not let me know what a fortunate choice you had made?" The prince told him everything in a whisper, and the king said, "Go home then, my son, at once, and pick up that frog skin of hers. Throw it in the fire and come back here as soon as you can. Then she will have to remain just as she is now." The prince did as his father told him, went home and threw the frog skin into the fire, where it was at once consumed. But things did not turn out as they expected. For the lovely princess, on coming home, sought for her frog skin, and not finding it, began to cry bitterly. When the prince confessed the truth, she shrieked aloud, and taking out a green poppy head, threw it at him. He went to sleep at once, but she sprang up to the window, sang her songs to the winds, upon which she was changed into a duck and flew away. The prince woke up in the morning and grieved sadly when he found his beautiful princess gone. Then he got on horseback and set out to find her, inquiring everywhere for the kingdom of the Queen of Light, his princess's mother, to whom he supposed she must have fled. He rode on for a very, very long time, till one day he came to a wide plain all covered with poppies in full flower, the odor of which so overpowered him that he could scarce keep upright in his saddle. Then he saw a queer little house, supported on 4 crooked legs. There was no door to the house, but knowing what he ought to do, he said, Little house, move on your crooked legs free. Turn your back to the wood and your front door to me. The hut with the crooked legs made a creaking noise and turned around with its doors towards the prince. He went straight in and found an old fury whose name was Yendrar inside. She was spinning from a distaff and singing. "How are you, my prince?" she said. "What brings you here?" So the prince told her, and she said, "You have done wisely to tell me the truth. And now your bride, the beautiful daughter of the Queen of Light, she flies to my house daily in the shape of a duck, and this is where she sits. Hide yourself under the table and watch your opportunity to lay hold of her. Hold her fast, whatever shape she assumes. When she is tired, she will turn into a spindle. You must then break the spindle in two, and you will find that which you are seeking." Presently the duck flew in, sat down beside the old fury, and began to preen her feathers with her beak. The prince seized her by the wing. The duck quacked, fluttered, and struggled to get loose. But seeing this was useless, she changed herself into a pigeon, then into a hawk, and then into a serpent, which so frightened the prince that he let her go, on which she became a duck again, quacked aloud, and flew out the window. The prince saw his mistake, and the old woman cried aloud, "What have you done, you careless fellow? You have frightened her away from me forever. But as she is your bride, I must find some other way to help you. Take this ball of thread, throw it before you, and wherever it goes, follow after it. You will then come to my sister's house, and she will tell you what to do next." So the prince went on, day and night, following the ball of thread, till he came to another queer little house, like the first, to which he said the same rhyme, and going in, find the second old fury, and told her his story. "Hide under the bench," she exclaimed, "your bride is just coming in." The duck flew in as before, and the prince caught her by the wing. She quacked and tried to get away. Then she changed herself into a turkey, then into a dog, then into a cat, then into an eel, so that she slipped through his hands and glided out the window. The prince was in despair, but the old woman gave him another ball of thread, and again he followed it, determined not to let the princess escape again so easily. So going on after the thread, as he kept on winding, he came to a funny little house, like the two first, and said, "Little house, move on your crooked legs free. Turn your back to the wood and your front door to me." The little house turned around so that he could go in, and he found a third old fury inside, much older than her sisters and having white hair. He told her his story and begged for help. "Why did you go against the wishes of your clever and sensible wife?" said the old woman. "You see, she knew better than you what her frog skin was good for. But you must needs be in such a hurry to display her beauty, to gain the world's applause, that you have lost her, and she was forced to fly away from you." The prince hid himself under the bench. The duck flew in and sat at the old woman's feet, on which he caught her by the wings. She struggled hard, but she felt his strength was too great for her to resist, so she turned herself into a spindle at once. He broke it across his knee, and lo and behold, instead of the two halves of the spindle, he held the hands of his beautiful princess, who looked at him lovingly with her beautiful eyes and smiled sweetly. And she promised him that she would remain as she was then, for since her mother's enemies were all dead, she had nothing to fear. They embraced each other and went out of the old fury's hut. Then the princess spoke some magical spells, and in the twinkling of an eye there appeared a wonderful bridge, reaching from where they stood hundreds of miles up to the very gallery of the palace belonging to the prince's father. It was all made of crystal, with golden handrails and diamond bosses upon them. The princess spoke some more magical words, and a golden coach appeared, drawn by 8 horses and a coachman and 2 tall footmen, all in golden livery. And there were 4 outriders on splendid horses riding by the side of the coach, and an equerry riding in front and blowing a brazen trumpet, and a long procession of followers in splendid dresses came after them. Then the prince and the princess got into the golden coach and drove away, thus accompanied, along the crystal bridge till they reached home, when the old king came out to meet them and embraced them both tenderly. He appointed the prince's successor, and such magnificent festivities were held on the occasion as have never been seen or heard of before. So that was our frog princess. And as was noted in the chat, there is a theme going on there. A few, actually. But I'm sure some of you will remember an enchanted human shedding an animal skin that then gets burned or otherwise got rid of. And problem ensues. That is a theme within fairy tales. It's its own category.
Mm,
Uh,
absolutely. Reminding me a little bit of the sea episode
mm-hmm.
in some respects.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And also the princess with a dog husband.
Oh, yes. Yes, it's happened. This is a common fairy tale problem. Why did
Yeah.
you get rid of my animal form? I needed that.
Don't burn my skin. So, you know, if you ever come across an animal skin that comes
In your
from
loved
an
one's
animal that
closet.
turned, yeah,
Yep.
from a human being that has shed its animal form, don't burn it. Nothing good will come of that.
Exactly.
I think there are a few stories where that actually solves the problem, but for the most part, it's problematic.
Yes, for the most part, do double check whether or not they need it, because most of the times tends to cause problems. I'd just like to thank I Agree for the 2 diamonds, and Nullis just donated an ice cream as well. Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much.
Also, hi Chief Moody in chat.
Hello, and the Woodlander. Good to see you. Hope you enjoyed the stories. What actually caught my attention is that this story also is within another category of stories of animal brides.
I'm
There,
hearing crackling from you, Lynx. A little bit.
that's odd.
Yeah, it is a little. But yeah, I agree with you. Story very much falls into the animal bride sort of category.
Yeah, that is a theme I would like to cover at a later point. So if we do that, then we will get more into it. But it really speaks for itself, where a man or a young man or a boy comes across a female animal that insists on marrying them. And it's usually also followed with a theme of 3. And it turns out that the bride is an enchanted princess of some sort. We have an interesting Norwegian one with a mouse. So
Oh.
that was one reason why it caught my attention. I was just reading through Polish stories when I came across it. So another interesting aspect we see here is that in order for a prince to become a king, he has to be married. And you did actually see that until fairly recently. If you were unmarried, you were considered unable to govern anything. So you had to prove that you could govern a family before you could govern a country. You saw that
Very
in
sensible.
yeah. You saw that in politics before the women entered the scene. And if a man was to be eligible for a position within politics, he had to be married. Um, and, that's definitely a rule I like. I do also find it interesting that all of his sons were grown-ups and still not married. You would think
Mm,
that would happen a bit
yes.
sooner, but apparently not in this story. Um, and the Queen of Light is
Yeah, I
also,
was I was wondering about her.
yeah,
I was wondering about her, yeah.
yeah. She's renowned, but the prince has to search for her kingdom, and it doesn't seem like he's heard of her before. Um, and neither has his father. So it definitely takes my mind to the theme of uh, an otherworldly bride. But we've mostly seen that with the
Absolutely.
water spirits so far. But we also see it in the more in the myths, with marrying a god or something. Though that's usually a man marrying, um, a god marrying
Mm.
a female human. Um, I didn't have time to search for the Queen of Light, but it's definitely not one of the evil
Yeah.
or dark figures, you know.
I know in the Slavic paganism there is a goddess who does let we talked about it on the Easter episode. I'm pretty sure about the goddess who does let the sun god in the Eastern pagan tradition out of his castle to rise in the morning, for the sun to rise in the morning.
Yeah,
So that might be that sort of thing. And I find it interesting that there was an association with the thunder and lightning there as well.
yeah.
Definitely.
Makes me
So
wonder who her father was.
yeah, her father seems kinda sky fathery. Uh
Yeah,
talking talking of sky fathers, I agree has asked in the chat if there's a trinity in Norse paganism, and I would say yes, kind of. Certainly there's your ruler archetypes in terms of Woden, who's very priest-like, who has that sort of hidden knowledge there, and Tyr, who's your standard sort of justice uh, ruler, of the kind very associated with fairness. That's why he sacrificed his hand to Fenrir, and Thor, or Thunor also, who I think is a separate. I think he's separate because he seems to fit more your thunder and lightning, sky father type there, and it's very much a warrior archetype and the protective aspect of rulership. And there are maybe goddesses you could group into a trinity as well, perhaps. Not so much actually, because there's only really Frigg and Freya, and I don't know where goddesses like Ea come into it. Well, I think that's the trinity, I would say.
there is one interesting aspect with the Norse religion, and I do think this is where some knowledge has been lost, in that Odin himself is part of a trinity. In the creation myth of the Norse,
Ah,
Odin is
yes.
one of three
With
brothers. It is Odin,
Loki
Vili, and
and
Ve.
Odin, Vili, and Ve, and then
Hmm.
they've I forgot about that trinity for a second. Yeah, with the they theorized that one of those might actually have been Loki, the one who breathes the sort of life into humanity, because that sort of that sort of life and passion also makes humanity flawed, I guess. Or I heard that interpretation on Aristogenesis, and I found it to be quite compelling that Loki had a hand in the creation of humanity, and thus
Yeah.
humanity is
Um.
quite passionate and quite flawed like that.
Yeah. This is my own bias, so have that in mind. My main beef, you could say, with interpreting things when quite a bit of knowledge has been lost, is that it might not be enough information to base a theory on. So
Mm,
I looked
yeah.
into that a few years ago, and for me it was a bit hard to say. Um, so I haven't concluded anything. Um, why, if Villian Way is then renamed, why did that happen? And everything. I just like logical
Yeah, true.
answers to that. So I personally don't have a theory on it, and I don't hold to any particular theory on it. I just find it really an interesting trinity. Um,
Yeah, I don't 100% hold to any theory on who Villian and Vey are either. Like, it's difficult because we're all trying to get in touch again with beings that were clearly very important to our ancestors. But yeah, that we certainly still got quite a bit to figure out about where to start and what's going on, for sure.
yeah. I have looked into quite a bit of different spiritual directions and quite a few theories within them. And I'm not saying this is everyone, of course, but some have a tendency to sort of let their imagination run a bit wild. And of course, if you don't have much source information to go on, then you're sort of left with that.
Yup.
So it's not really a critique per se, but it's something to be a bit wary about in my case, in my opinion. So
Yeah, that was really a lot of why people look at contemporary paganism and Wicca and stuff. Like, uh, I don't want to insult anyone, but yeah, there's a certain aspect of letting the imagination run a bit wild
yeah,
sometimes.
there's plenty of people out there doing that, and um, that can definitely become a problem. And quite a few people are making a lot of money out of that. Out of that. So be careful with who you listen to.
A lot of different weird smelling incenses.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Some of the mediums can be quite interesting. Those who say they channel this and that, that can be actually quite
Hmm.
amusing to
Yes.
watch. It's not anything I swallow whole.
Yeah, somebody has to like provide a few like pretty irrefutable experiences and stuff. Like, they have to like prove to me that they don't really have too many ulterior motives before I can believe that they've had contact with a spirit, because I think that's quite rare these days.
Yeah. I do get why they might think they are channeling stuff. But in many cases it's very hard to prove. Um, and that's, you know, the pitfall of that genre. Because it's no way to
It is,
say
yeah.
if what they're saying is true or not. So, you know, be careful out there. But I do think our audience are quite sensible. So I'm not really worried about that.
That's true. We got Fornol in the YouTube chat, by the way. Hail Fornol.
Hey, good to see you.
They like an offering. They like a bit of an offering, and that is about the correct way to thank and to ask with offering. And just keep it simple. You don't have to get into any sort of like craft stuff or any sort of stuff which calls itself witchcraft or nothing like that. You can be quite straightforward as a pagan, not needing a sacrificial knife and 10 amethyst crystals.
Yeah,
Low barrier to entry.
yeah. Um,
Yeah,
no, that was a tangent from a frog princess.
that was quite a tangent, actually. Yes.
Yeah, I also like
Oh.
the aspect that the wife had to prove herself. So, in order for the husband to take the kingship, then his wife had to measure up as well. So that was an interesting aspect I definitely noted. Um, and also in this story we had three Furies. Um, that's okay, I agree. The tangent was quite alright.
It was a
Um,
good tangent.
yeah, it was. Um, and the Furies definitely reminds me of the Fates. Um, and we see those in quite a few stories. And interestingly enough, one was quite a lot older than the other two. Um, the reason why I connect them with the Fates are the Hanks of Yarn that leads to the other one. Um, of course, the Fates are spinning the yarn of life and will cut it at its appropriate time.
Yeah.
So, and as we saw with that princess story and King Valamon the White Bear and East of the Sun and West of the Moon, then it was the woman who had to measure up after causing trouble and, have to prove themselves. And in this story, it was the prince, but it wasn't any deed of, particular masculine traits like fighting some monster or anything like that. It was keep his grip on her, and in that way showing that she was the woman for him. So that was definitely an interesting point, I thought.
That that is very very light the feminine, actually, because there is this I think a lot of women today deny it, but there is this thing with women where we sometimes don't like you to give up.
Yeah,
I mean, be careful with that. I guess. I don't know. It's quite a sort of difficult one for men to have to deal with sometimes, but there is an inherent desire within most women anyway to sort of be
Yeah,
pursued a bit like that and to have someone who is going to not give up on obtaining them. I
we
mean,
do like.
to an extent.
Yeah,
I gotta be careful here.
well, we do like the wooing process.
Yes.
Um, even if women deny it. Um, we do want to be desired not just for our
Mm.
bodies, but for who we are. And um, that is definitely one thing that
Mm.
has been lost in the sexual revolution, quote unquote.
Absolutely.
I think that is one of the main problems it has caused.
Yeah, like
Um,
there is no right for a man to woo a woman. Like we lost the courting process and the
yeah,
conventions surrounding it.
yeah, well, both sides in many cases tend to see that it's inevitable that you are going to sleep together. And at least for the women, it's really said if you want to, it's okay. When it's really not, and even if you think it's what you want, in some cases it really isn't. Hence,
Mm.
we get the problem of regretting the day after or a few days after, and in these crazy times, that can definitely lead a man into huge trouble. And
Oh,
that is just so wrong, so wrong. Um, so it skews the whole thing with how to put it. It is very nihilistic. The whole focus of finding a life partner is in many instances lost. Um,
That's true, yeah.
sorry, I just had to cough. Um,
Oh no, you got the coof.
oh yeah, my nasal passages is a bit tight as well, so they will probably give me chronic COVID or something,
Oh dear.
or at least claim
Yeah.
that's what I have or something. Um, but back in the day, a woman had to prove that she was worthy, and part of that was not being a loose woman. And a man had to earn before he could get there with real commitment. And if they couldn't uphold that and had an accidental pregnancy, they both had to take the consequences of that. And losing that has been very, very detrimental to our societies. So, you know, uh, teach your children well, both men and women.
Yes, indeed. Oh, by the way, I ought to clarify on the women don't like you to give up. If she's saying things like, "Why are you outside my house? It's 2 in the morning," give up. Probably. Just to clarify, because I know this is the internet. If she's saying that, yep, leave alone, leave well alone.
Unless that her tone is very flirty, but then you will know if
Indeed.
if she is angry, then give up. So yeah, but there are women who take that too far as well, and the man takes that as a sign that she's not interested, which can also easily be done. You have to give him something to keep it up. So
It is a delicate balance. it is an art which has been somewhat lost.
Yeah. Nolus, do you have a point with what? No Midnight Serenade? That is a point. Might be something you don't want to give up on. So,
I mean, if
yeah.
you wrote her a really good song, she might be amenable to you being outside of her house late at night.
Um,
Depends on the
yeah.
woman. Depends on the
Uh,
woman, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. And if you do that, don't be drunk.
Well, it affects your singing for a start. So
Yeah.
definitely I wouldn't be drunk. Not if you want to hold a note.
Yeah. Um,
Oh dear. I'm not sure I'm qualified to give dating advice to men on the internet. So I think I'll
um,
stop.
yeah, I tend to
Oh.
stumble into things, so that might be a good advice for me as well.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Usually ends up with, how did I get here? But it's, for the most part, a nice thing, so I'm not complaining.
It's like you are friends with someone, and then suddenly your feelings catch up to you and you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear. But I think we should have the next story before it turns into some sort of advice stream or something.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust my advice on anything, particularly. Oh dear.
Yeah. Uh, we might not want this to end up as a dating stream.
If you're going to throw stones at a window, keep them small. Bricks don't work.
Yeah.
I
Unless
I agree, sounding suspiciously like he speaks from experience.
well, if
Oh.
you do turn to bricks, if that's all you got, then make sure you have the money to replace the window.
Was courtly love a form of proto-simping?
Maybe.
Hmm.
That is a good question. Uh, I would definitely say that when it came to queens, with the courtiers um, tending to go a bit overboard about making songs about them and all of that.
People simped hard over Elizabeth I.
And her mother.
Hmm.
She was quite a popular lady before she fell out of the infamous King's Grace. So, but that might have been expected, and they might have done that for getting the favor of the king. So, I guess
Yeah,
it's
true.
maybe the question is if they were simping for the queen or the king.
I don't think you get the favor of a man by giving suspiciously large presents to his wife.
No, maybe not.
Nah, probably not. We have another story. We have the last story.
Yeah.
The Enchanted Frog. It's from Germany.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hear that one.
The Enchanted Frog. Once upon a time, there was a merchant who had 3 daughters. But his wife was with God. Once he planned a journey across the ocean to a foreign land in order to bring back gold and other valuable things. He consoled his weeping children, saying, "I will bring back something beautiful for you. What do you want?" The oldest asked, for a silk dress, and it must be made of 3 kinds of silk. The second desired a feathered hat, and it must have 3 kinds of feathers. The youngest finally said, "Bring me a rose, dear father, and it must be fresh, and have 3 colors." The merchant promised to do this, kissed his daughters, and departed. After arriving in the foreign land, he ordered the dress of the 3 kinds of silk for his oldest daughter, and the hat with the 3 kinds of feathers for the second one. Both were soon finished, and of seldom splendor. Then he sent messages throughout the entire country to seek a 3-colored rose for his youngest and dearest daughter, but they all returned empty-handed. And even though the merchant had promised a high price, and even though there were more roses than there are daisies here, sadly he set off for home and was downhearted the entire voyage. This side of the ocean he came to a large garden in which there was nothing but roses and roses. He went inside and looked, and behold, on a slender bush in the middle of the garden there was a 3-colored rose. Filled with joy, he plucked it and was about to leave when he was magically frozen in place. A voice behind him cried out, "What do you want in my garden?" He looked up. A large frog was sitting there on the bank of a clear pond, staring at him with its googly eyes. It said, "You have broken my dear rose. This will cost you your life unless you give me your youngest daughter to wife." The merchant was terrified. He begged and pleaded, but all to no avail, and in the end he had to agree to marry his dearest daughter to the ugly frog. He could now move his feet, and he freely walked out of the garden. The frog called out after him, "In 7 days I shall come for my wife." With great sorrow the merchant gave his youngest daughter the fresh rose and told her what had happened. When the terrible day arrived, she crept under her bed, for she did not want to go at all. At the hour of noon a stately carriage drove up. The frog sent his servants into the house, and they immediately went to the bedroom and dragged the screaming maiden from her bed, then carried her into the carriage. The horses leaped forward, and a short time later they were in the blossoming rose garden. In the middle of the garden, immediately behind the clear pond, there stood a small house. They took the bride into the house and laid her on a soft bed. The frog, however, sprang into the water. Darkness fell, and after the maiden had awakened from her unconsciousness, she heard the frog outside singing wonderfully sweet melodies. As midnight approached, he sang ever more sweetly, and came closer and closer to her. At midnight, the bedroom door opened, and the frog jumped onto her bed. However, he had touched her with his sweet songs, and she took him into bed with her and warmly covered him up. The next morning when she opened her eyes, behold, the ugly frog was now the handsomest prince in the world. He thanked her with all his heart, saying, "You have redeemed me, and are now my wife," and they lived long and happily together.
Okay, so that was the Enchanted Frog story. If Katrina's narration was low compared to the music, then that was my fault. There was a bit of discrepancy, and I'm not sure if I remembered to change the source.
I was listening on YouTube, just to the playback. Sounded all right to me. I could hear what I was saying, but to
Okay.
be fair, I might have had a better understanding because I said it. But I don't know. I've certainly boosted the audio on the main project, but when we put it up as a
Yeah,
video and taken it down a notch as well on the music.
yeah. We started doing that just a few minutes before going live, so I don't remember if I actually changed it or not. And if I didn't, then I'm sorry, but it will be the right one for the video. So if you thought it hard to hear, then check that out.
Oh, yeah, that other merchant sounds like a very bad dad, I agree. Actually do that? Oh, jeebs. That's some sick stuff. Very bad. But yeah, apart from this merchant really being a very bad dad, who is like, I don't want to die. Sure, I have my youngest daughter. I'm gonna go now. To be fair though, he was quite determined to get that rose for her. Kind of weird.
Mhm.
Kind of weird. But
Well, I just want to point out that we do see a theme in fairy tales of fathers giving a daughter up to an animal, a talking animal, and sometimes it's quite willingly, other times it's less willing. So it really is giving up your daughter to the unknown because they don't know what the animal is.
I guess that's what giving away feels like for dads sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
Must be. Are these is this story a deep insight into the psychology of dads? I don't know. It has threes again though. Three silks, three feathers, three colours. There's another 9 there.
Mm-hmm. Always the 3, 6, and 9.
I was trying to figure out the significance of these gifts really, and the first two are quite mundane things, but the third is obviously something that, well, I don't know if we can breed any sort of free coloured rose now, but I think in previous times nobody would have bothered with that. So it's clearly something which can only result from the supernatural. And
Um,
I'm kind of wondering, like, why that's what the third daughter would ask for.
well, we do usually see that, in particular with daughters that have a wish for their father to go somewhere. Um, and I want to say in other kinds of wishes as well that two of the daughters want the mundane, uh, something from daily life, um, usually something fancy. But the
Yeah,
third daughter wants something. I'm
usually
not.
simple and
Yeah,
natural.
yeah. It's tied to nature. It's more something sublime that shows more a real appreciation for life, I would say. So, it's not a dress or jewelry or anything like that. Um,
Mm.
but it's not always easy to get a hold of either. So, I definitely see that as a pointer for that being something more, oh, what's the word? What is that called? um,
Woods. I can't quite
I
think myself, to be honest.
no, I can't think of it. But it's more in the spiritual realm than the physical realm. So
Yeah.
I definitely see that as a point, something that points to transcendence, and
No, certainly.
mhm.
That is sort of what I was thinking with it too. And the youngest daughter, like, whenever I see this again, this trinity, I think of the sort of maiden, mother, crone type or trinity of goddesses a lot of the time. And I don't know that it makes sense maybe that the youngest one always um wants something natural because of course the youngest in the triumvirate of goddesses is the maiden goddess, the sort of goddess representing the dawn of the day, and the other two goddesses in a triumvirate like that are possibly more concerned with women's affairs in civilization. So the youngest one is kind of the pure, uncorrupted maiden and wants something natural, I guess. But that's what I see these three daughter trios as kind of representing a lot of the time.
That is a good point. It sort of also takes my mind to the level of maturity, because the two eldest are older than the youngest, of course, and they have started to, so to speak, set their feet in the real world. But children, they tend to live in a imaginary world at times, so they are more in touch with imagination and those things. And that is something you tend to lose as you grow up. So that might also be an aspect in that the youngest are still able to see the magic in the world.
Absolutely, yeah. That could be the thing, that like the uncorrupted nature of youth could come into play there as well. Um, I'm kind of the other thing that intrigues me about this story is there's no explanation for why the prince is a frog. And this prince, like your frog in the Polish story, seems to have magical powers whilst being a frog.
Hmm.
And I wonder if that is uh again like symbolic of his a fall into darkness for him, that he maybe represents some sort of other deity that needs, the intervention of the maiden goddess in this sort of archetype because it seems a very old archetype.
Yeah, it does take my mind to Persephone and Hades. Persephone
Mm.
is still very much innocent and just running about enjoying all the flowers and everything, and then suddenly Hades comes and takes her away. So, but you could say that her growing up in that experience was quite harrowing. But then again, it can be quite harrowing becoming a woman. So,
That is true. And
um,
we've got a little theory in the chat that it could be a reassuring story for, the sort of culture of having an arranged marriage, which I think nearly everyone would have got back in the day. Your family would have had at least some say, or would have at least introduced you to who you married. Most
yeah,
times, I think.
yeah, it was a bit more of a family affair. Though I think in our day, that aspect might be a bit hyped up for political
Mm,
reasons.
yeah.
Um, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. But it might not have been, you know, the excessive force that they say. Um,
Arranged marriages are always portrayed as excessive force. But to be honest, I have known women from non-white cultures who were like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get an arranged marriage." What happens if you don't like who your family pick out for you? Well, they pick out another one, is what they basically said.
yeah. Of course, there are the harrowing stories of being married off at gunpoint.
Oh yeah, there's
But
definitely those. They happen,
yeah,
undoubtedly.
but I do think that they also have the aspect of introducing the young people, and if it's not their taste, then they introduce another one. So um, I don't know, so it's a bit hard to say. There was one spinster in my family a few generations back, and that was quite a scandal because she fell in love with a married man and would not have anyone
Oh
else.
no.
But the man stayed married and everything, so it wasn't that kind of a scandal. It was more her not wanting anyone else that was the scandal, because that was a bit scandalous back in the day. And she chose to remain unmarried for her life. So, um, that is one example of not excessive force being used. So, I do think we do have the entire spectrum when it comes to arranged marriages. So,
Yeah, that's a really sad story. One man she
yeah,
likes already taken. Little bit
yeah,
little bit weird to not open yourself to any other options though.
yeah. I have no idea why she didn't want anyone else. It might be as simple as she
Mm.
didn't meet anyone who uh, she saw any potential in, and then clung to the memory or something. I don't know. It was quite a few years before my time, so it's a bit of a family story, so to speak.
Indeed. I think everybody has them. The
Yeah,
scandalous relative.
yeah.
Yeah. That
The
was the
eccentric,
last.
the
Sorry.
eccentric aunt or uncle. Most families have them.
Yep. Indeed. Yeah, that was the last of our stories tonight, folks.
Yes, it was.
And yeah, I just thought it was quite liked it. Quite romantic there at the end with the frog serenade.
Yeah, should be
Mm.
up Nollis Street.
Yes. Nollis apparently he likes to do a serenade. I mean,
Yeah,
Nollis Nollis can write a girl some poetry. That's a factor on Nollis's side.
Mm-hmm.
Like a bit of poetry, the ladies.
Yeah. It's not
Wait, no,
every
not
day.
distribute rewards. I was meant to add more lemons to the chest, but I clicked distribute rewards, so I'm now distributing 11.4 lemons.
You didn't feed the chest?
No, the
Shame
chest
on
is
you.
hungry. I don't know if I can do this again during this stream.
Shame
Oh,
on you. Shame.
the chest is depleted.
Yeah.
I have neglected the chest.
Yes, you
No, it's
did.
got some lemons. Oh man.
So did I. Nollis got 7 and I got 4.4. Thank you for the ice cream, Nollis.
I have to say, after I've distributed the chest, the message telling me who got lemons comes up on my screen and does not go away.
You have to click it away. Top right corner.
Yep.
Yankee Apple donated an ice cream. Thank you. It is very kind of you.
What, the arrow?
There's
No,
supposed to be an
that's
X.
invite friends. There's no X, so I don't know what's going on with the lack of an X.
Yeah.
I'll scroll up to see it, to see the X. Oh well.
Well,
Oh.
it doesn't go on stream as far as I know, so
Yeah.
that should be good.
Oh,
Okay, so
I will feed the
that's-
chest properly next time.
oh, you
I'm half
better.
asleep.
Or I'll be coming and giving you a spanking.
That's what that's. I'm uncomfortable.
Well, you gotta feed the chest.
I know I got to feed the chest, but there's no need to threaten me with physical discipline. Jesus, this is the internet. Even
Yeah.
the internet's gonna meme that. Oh.
Yeah, just ignoring the body of water between us and everything, because everyone knows I can walk on water and everything, so, yeah.
Yeah. You're magical links.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm the super links.
Someone's just listening because our voices are soothing. Lost track of what we just said. That's good. I'm not gonna repeat.
Well, I do hope that we at least sometimes say something that is slightly interesting and not just soothing, but we'll take the soothing
true.
voice.
Yeah. We aim to relieve stress here
Yeah.
on this show. There's a lot of stress on this scene. A lot of stress.
Yeah, we all need breaks from politics and news feeds and all of that. So why not seek out our roots?
Yeah, indeed. Well, and on that bombshell, upon my neglecting to feed the chest, we probably have to say good night.
Yeah. So we will be back next Sunday, same place, same time. And
Yes, indeed.
I hope you have a good Sunday for what is left of it, depending where you are in the world. Thank you for the time, and I agree. You have been very generous tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Username that I really can't say, but thank you.
Thank you, Koi.
Moneystein. But yes, Schmackelstein. Maybe I can say that half of the username.
Yeah. Um. So yeah. Hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and hope to see you next time.
Yes. See you all next time.
Okay. Good
Bye bye.
night.
Thank you,
Bye.
Stephen.
Yeah. Bye.